Kumar, who has a huge experience in the field of dispute resolution. He is the GM Legal and the group head of JSW Group, which is a 16 billion USD group with India's largest steel company, in addition to various other business activities from Mumbai. He earlier worked as the general counsel for ABB, Mossabir, etc. He has handled various international arbitration seated in the popular seats like London, Singapore, etc. I am proudly inviting Mr. Ashok Kumar to deliver his inaugural address. Sir.
Yeah, uh, thanks a lot, Banu, for the warm introduction. And thank you, Mr. Ravishankar and other co-panelists for this opportunity to speak to this audience. I know there is request to start my video, but unfortunately I am stuck in a hotel. I just reached Bangalore yesterday from Mumbai. And I don't think the video is so clear, so I have some constraints with respect to my video. I think let's continue with audio for time being. Hope that is fine.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Yeah. So I'm actually in a hotel. Yeah. So of course, this is a very interesting topic, and it's an ever evolving topic, if I may say so. As far as court interference in arbitration is concerned, that's there for the time immemorial, and that will continue to be there for the foreseeable future. There's no doubt the courts have been interfering, in spite we all knowing that arbitration is a separate process where the judiciary and court intervention is very much very less required. That's the whole concept of arbitration, right? But there are many instances, right from the appointment of arbitrators or the interim reliefs, right? So time we have to go to courts, and the courts are never reluctant to, in spite of having a separate arbitration agreement or arbitration redressal forum procedure given in the agreement itself. More so in international agreements, where we have India-seated arbitration, right? I've seen at least some instances where the courts have interfered even when there is no specific mention about the jurisdiction of courts of India. So even when there is an absence of jurisdiction clause, still the courts have. So the point is, the courts in general, more so in India, are pro-interference. All right. So there are various stages of interference, right from the appointment of arbitrator, even before that there is interim relief, and subsequently during the enforcement, right? Be it for enforcements or 3437. So everywhere the role of court in India in arbitration is very much alive. And practically speaking, you can't do away with the courts by having an arbitration, which is the objective of having an arbitration. So if I have to take a couple of practical examples, even today we were discussing about one issue of arbitration being mentioned in Dubai. But again, we are exploring ways to go to court to take some interim reliefs. So the court's interference is always there. Maybe if we can have any interactive kind of during the course of the lecture, we will come to know more about what are all the occasions where the courts have interfered and how they have normally interfered, be it the various high courts or Supreme Court. So we have seen the court's interference is always there. Yeah. Mr. Ravishankar, maybe if we have to discuss on particular issue within this topic, maybe we can.
No, actually, nothing like that. If you have anything special on challenging of awards or anything, you can say. Otherwise, it's question and answer session. You can take questions after my
Yeah,
presentation.
yeah, yeah. So as far as Indian arbitration are concerned, my practical experience has been arbitration is always seen as one step before going to courts. So arbitration doesn't end with arbitration alone. It leads to the further steps in court, either interim reliefs or during the subsequent closure of the arbitration. So again, we go back to the fundamental question of then why do we go for arbitration, right? Then if that is the case, if the court's interference is so much as we are discussing, then why arbitration is required? Still, arbitration is required because the nature of interference, if we see in courts, by the courts, are mostly with respect to interim reliefs or enforcement. As far as the resolution of the subject matter dispute per se is concerned, that is resolved in arbitration, right? So we will have to live with this interference of court, but we have to minimize, we have to, as a fraternity, as the legal fraternity, including the judiciary, we will have to come up with some guidelines with respect to minimize this interference. And many times interference is also for good of both the parties. Say, for example, in one of the instances where a Singapore arbitration with where the other side, we were a receiving party and the other side has gone to an invoked arbitration under Singapore and the arbitral award was against us. But then for the enforcement, it was pending in Kolkata High Court. So when the enforcement was pending, the company which I am mentioning, so they got into IBC. So during the pendency of enforcement, if a company goes into arbitration, I mean, if the company gets into insolvency proceedings, then what is the status of this claim? So this issue was brought in before NCLT and subsequently it went to NCLAT as well. So here the court said that no, it will not be considered as an judgment debtor or judgment creditor. So it will not be seen as where the party who has succeeded in the arbitration will have a better claim over a party who has not initiated the arbitration. So still, since the arbitration enforcement is still pending before Kolkata High Court, the NCLT and NCLAT subsequently held that the party who is an arbitrator award holder doesn't have a better claim than a party who has not, whose award is not crystallized through court order or arbitral award. So this is one such instance where IBC and arbitration and courts were kind of interject, and again the court's interference here has been good for the party whose claim has been not nullified and he has been allowed to go through the IBC process as far as enforcing his claim is concerned. Yeah. Yes, Ravi Shankar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
So,
Yes, Banu, you can go ahead. Banu, you can go ahead.
And one more important relevant topic for all of us is during whether the courts can interfere or not, whether the arbitral award can be partially set aside by court or not. As we all know, under Section 34, right, the courts can nullify an arbitral award and ask for revision, ask for a reconstitution of the arbitration tribunal and recommencement of arbitration. We had one instance, just I wanted to share one instance where in one of the arbitration, the court has under 34, the arbitral award, in fact, out of the many claims, they have acknowledged a couple of claims, but though they have acknowledged the entitlement for the claim, but the computation of the claim was not upheld. For that reason, the arbitrator did not allow that claim. So here under 34, when the matter went to Bombay High Court, then Bombay High Court said that when the arbitrator has acknowledged the entitlement for a claim, just because the computation is not satisfactorily provided by the claimant cannot be a reason for non-allowing that claim. So the arbitrator could have come up with some computation which is reasonable and awarded certain claim amount. But now the court is stuck. So what the court can do now? Can the court in this where the arbitration is concluded can modify the arbitral award and say that and enhance the claim amount or not was the subject matter, or it has to send it back to the original arbitration itself for reconsideration. So this is again, I feel there is a gray area with respect to this. Maybe Ravi Shankar will be able to throw more light on this topic. So this is one I would like to know more on this forum. And second is again one more example where I would like to share with respect to constitution of arbitration itself. There was an arbitration initiated and the court appointed an arbitrator, and the arbitrator goes into the merits of the case and the claims. But the other side raises one fundamental issue, whether the person who has initiated the arbitration and the legal proceedings on behalf of the company is duly authorized to initiate or not, right? So in this case, the court held, the arbitrator found that the power of attorney given to the claimant's attorney doesn't cover arbitration, though it says legal proceedings. So that was a very myopic view taken by the arbitrator, and he has terminated the whole arbitral proceedings. So here again, courts had to interfere and say that no, when the court have upheld the arbitration agreement and appointed the arbitrator based on the section 11 filed by the same person who has signed the arbitral papers and the court proceedings, and the arbitrator shouldn't have nullified and terminated the proceedings on that ground alone. So that's again one interesting aspect that we all can ponder about. And another one example is with respect to applicability of stamp duty, right? So when the agreement, the underlying agreement is not adequately stamped, we all know there was even a recent judgment by Supreme Court, I think Justice Nariman's judgment, where it is clearly mentioned that the High Court can impound the document and then they can, after adjudication of the adequate stamp duty, the arbitration can be commenced. But there is a scenario where the arbitrator has been appointed and the non-payment of stamp duty becomes an issue before the arbitrator. And on that issue alone, the arbitrator, instead of impounding and asking for adjudication of the appropriate stamp value, goes on to terminate the arbitral proceedings itself. So again, the party had to go to court and the court had to interfere, and again giving a chance to the party, the claiming party, to for adjudication of the stamp duty, and the arbitration continues. So I've just given 2-3 sets of examples apart from the routine interference of the court, right? For interim reliefs or appointment or 34, 37 kind of scenarios, the court's interference, that's why I said it's not avoidable. You cannot do away with this fully. Maybe at times it is a necessary evil, right? That's why to substantiate that argument, I have given these few examples that the court's interference becomes very much necessary. Yes, Mr. Ravishankar, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Banu, you can proceed.
So here I invite today's speaker who is having experience of 27 years in the field of dispute resolution. He's an arbitration lawyer handling various international and domestic arbitrations. He's also an advocate on record in the Supreme Court of India. Here presenting Mr. Ravi Shankar.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. We are on the third day of the lecture series. Just to sum up the last 2 days. First day, we were going through the various features of the India-seated international arbitrations. And the chief guest was also that day speaking about the possibility of promoting India as an international arbitration seat. In that, we saw the importance of the New York Convention, which brought in 163 countries together to recognize the arbitration agreements as well as to enforce the arbitration awards arising out of the member countries. And then we saw the importance of the UNCITRAL model law, which brought in an uniformity in the procedural law of more than 60 countries around the world. So with this platform, then we saw what is the importance of the seat. The importance of the seat is the jurisdictional value, and procedural law and the supervising courts come along with the seat of arbitration. And we saw the importance of the selection of substantive law and law governing the arbitration agreement. And then we discussed about the uniqueness of the neutral law selection process in the international arbitration, as well as the importance and facility of having a neutral seat in an international arbitration practice. And then we were discussing about various aspects, special aspects which are there available for the parties who are arbitrating in India. Then yesterday we were discussing about the emergency arbitration awards as well as the interim reliefs, how you can obtain in an international arbitration situation. We were discussing that the first best option available to any party is going to the respondent's country and approach the local national court for an interim order, which doesn't require any enforcement difficulty, which will not have any enforcement difficulties. Then we discussed about the new invention of arbitral institutions, the emergency arbitration there. We also discussed about the difficulties in enforcing the emergency arbitration awards, not only in India, in various other countries, except Singapore and Hong Kong. Still, many countries do not really recognize the enforcement of an emergency arbitration award. And we also discussed about the various appeals and other provisions available with regard to the interim awards and the interim protections. We also discussed about various situations from which these interim awards arise. So today we are going to the next step, that is court interventions at the level of challenging of the arbitration award. That means it is a section 34 proceeding is what we are going to see today. So all of you must have gone through this process many times, but still let us go into the details, because there are some good changes have happened in 2015 and in 2019 also, which has really changed the scope of section 34 for the benefit of the arbitration. Now, first thing what we all should know is that the grounds specified, except the grounds which are added in 2015 and 19, all the grounds are as it is, we can say, copied from the UNCITRAL model law. So the international lawyers here can easily understand the scope of section 34 of Indian Act in comparison with the UNCITRAL model law. It is just the copy, only the same grounds which are in Article 34 of UNCITRAL model law are incorporated as section 34 in the Indian Arbitration Act, that is in Arbitration and Conciliation Act. And courts are very careful right from the beginning that section 34 proceedings cannot be treated as a regular civil appeal. You all must have seen section 34 grounds. None of the grounds allow the courts or the parties to raise anything about the merits. Merits are completely ruled out from the scope of section 34. Merits are completely given to the domain of arbitrator. That is the understanding we all should develop. And the court's powers under section 34 are very restricted. Every time when a court is testing an award, it has to keep it in mind. It is not going to deal with the civil appeal. It is not going to see the correctness of the award. It will see only the correctness as defined by section 34, as defined in section 34, which is a very, very limited challenge. That is why it is not even called as appeal. It is a petition filed under section 34 seeking to challenge the arbitration award. And also you should keep it in mind, from 2015, there is a substantial change in the section 34 with regard to awards arising out of international commercial arbitration and the domestic awards, that I will explain to you little later. Now let us see some fundamentals of challenging of the award. There is no way to challenge an arbitration award except filing an application under section 34. Some of our lawyers and clients already tried writ petitions and various courses of action to seeking to set aside an arbitration award. But now courts have very well settled practice, and the law is very settled that if there is an arbitration award, the only course of action available for the parties to challenge the same is by filing a section 34 application. The second important thing, the section 34 application, you should see the jurisdiction. Now, except the chartered high courts of India, Bombay, Chennai, Calcutta, and Delhi, most of the high courts do not have original jurisdiction. So most of the awards are getting challenged in the district commercial courts. After that, it will come to High Court and then Supreme Court. So this situation is slightly modified with regard to the international commercial arbitration. If it is an award arising out of an international commercial arbitration, then the jurisdiction directly lies with the high courts. They need not go to the district court for any assistance or any interference by the court. So this is very important. You should keep it in mind. Now we are confining our session only to the international arbitration. So our jurisdiction is only high courts. Then limitation is another major issue which had various rounds of litigations, and finally now law is very, very clearly settled. Only the 3 months, that is 90 days, is the limitation for challenging an award. This limitation is not from the date of award. It is from the date of receipt of the award by the respondent or the parties, we can say. Here there is a tricky question. In case if the award is not received by a party, what will happen? I will explain you a practical case which we handled in Bombay High Court. there was an award given by a tribunal of 3 Supreme Court judges against Chennai party in favor of Bombay party. One of the parties to the arbitration, there were 4 or 5 respondents. One of the respondents did not get the award. He came to know about the award after the enforcement was initiated in Chennai High Court about 1 year after. But before that, the arbitration award was also challenged by the other parties, leaving this one party. So when we tried to file the application, it was hopelessly time barred because of the date. Then when we did the research, we realized that nowhere our client received the signed copy of the award from the tribunal. Then when we checked the tribunal's office, they also said we just handed over to the lawyers. So law settled by the Supreme Court in this is even handing over of the award to the lawyer is not a starting point of the limitation, because the section clearly provides that the arbitrator or arbitral tribunal or the institution have to send the award to the registered office, or party themselves should be present in the hearing and receive it. If both of them doesn't happen, only the knowledge about the award is the starting point of limitation. So we finally successfully got it admitted before Justice Karanjawala, and it was Katawala. It was a fantastic experience for us. So be careful, the arbitrators, you should send the awards directly to the parties by registered post. That is preferable. In the limitation, beyond the 3 months, 1 month more is excusable on valid grounds. Otherwise, even 1 day delay will not be condoned by the courts. So if you are challenging an award, very be careful about the limitation point, which is a dangerous thing. Otherwise, your party, your client will lose the opportunity totally to have the matter discussed and decided on merits. Next is establishing on the basis of the record of the tribunal. Because even if you see UNCITRAL model law specifically says that parties have to prove, that is the word it used in the UNCITRAL model law, parties have to prove the following grounds in the section 34. That means there can be any new record also can be introduced in the appeal level. So that doubt was raised in various judgments, and now in 2015 amendment, government has rectified that and specifically said parties cannot go beyond the documents produced before the arbitrator while challenging the arbitration award under section 34. So now law is very settled. So all the documents, whatever you need to file, you should file at the first instance in this arbitration tribunal only. You cannot introduce any new document in a later stage while challenging the award. So this is very important point you have to note down. Then time limit also is prescribed in 2015 Act. They are telling that section 34 applications should be decided within a period of at least 1 year, which is not practically happening everywhere because of the dependency of the commercial court litigations and various arbitration petitions. But still courts are trying to dispose of the matters as speedy as possible. Now let us go a little bit in detail about the section 34, what all are provided in that. These are all technical grounds, but still they are important for us to discuss, since these also can lead to setting aside of an award. So first one is section 34 2A1 talks about the incapacity of any party. This goes to the root of the matter, because in arbitration, any issue which can be raised before the court while seeking to set aside the award should go to the root of the matter. If it is only a correction or it doesn't really go to the root of the matter, then those those grounds cannot be raised at all. So the first is incapacity. This will go to the root of the matter, because if any party who is not having the capacity to enter into the arbitration agreement, or who is not authorized to enter into an arbitration agreement, then that arbitration agreement itself can become null and void. So in such a situation, an award cannot be passed. As the chief guest Ashok Kumar was telling, in Arabian countries, all Arab countries, including United Arab Emirates, if a party has to sign an arbitration agreement, a contract with an arbitration agreement, then the authority letter or the board resolution should specifically state that this particular person is allowed or permitted or authorized to enter into an arbitration agreement. Then only it is a valid authority for that person. In our country, it is not like that. Even on a common board resolution, parties are signing the contracts. We also accept it. Number two is the reason why we are, Mr. Abhinav, actually we will take questions at the end of the lecture. We will have half an hour. So please hold on. At that time, you can type in the chat box. So with regard to the incapacity, in one of the case, one of the party tried to escape from the arbitration proceeding, saying that the manager who signed the contract at that point of time was not authorized to do such signatures on behalf of the company because his powers were restricted. So this issue went to the High Court also, but in the High Court, seeing the conduct of the parties, it was taken as a valid arbitration agreement. What was the conduct of the party? After signing the contract, certain drawings had to be exchanged between the parties. So that was done by the so-called respondent within a week's time as specified in the agreement. So court took a view that the signature happens after a week's time, exchanging of the drawings happen as specified in the contract. So parties have acted upon the contract. Now they cannot back out. So various such interesting cases are there. You can see many cases with regard to the incapacity. Invalidity of the arbitration agreement under procedural law. This is very, very important. Means an arbitration agreement has to be a valid arbitration agreement in whichever country parties are submitting it to. For example, if both the parties decide to have an arbitration in India having procedural law of Singapore, then Indian courts and Indian law will not permit or will not take it as a valid arbitration agreement, because the seat and procedural law cannot be different. In the same way, if you go to China, in China, foreign arbitral institutions, that means international arbitral institutions like ICC or SIAC, are not permitted to administer China-seated arbitrations. So if your clause says that in the International Chamber of Commerce arbitration will happen in Shanghai, then it will become, it has a possibility of becoming an invalid arbitration clause. So if an award comes out of such an invalid arbitration clause, then that award also can be set aside. The third point is insufficient or improper notice. This is a kind of natural justice policy also. If the opposite party or the respondent is not aware of the proceeding, or it is not informed properly by a notice, then that party who is suffering an award without appearing before the tribunal can surely challenge it. But at the same time, nowadays in the contracts, we are putting even specific email IDs, we are putting postal addresses. So if the notice was sent in that email ID, and if there is a proof to establish that, then that is taken as a sufficient notice today. So if any party is taking a lame excuse that we were not aware of it or something, that won't work, because courts have never interfered into such awards for such a unacceptable excuse of not receiving the notice. So parties, while incorporating the email IDs and sometimes mobile numbers, you should be very careful in handling those gadgets, because that can become like a difficulty in a later stage. So whatever you put in the contract, you should keep a vigilant watch over it. Award beyond submissions. Award beyond submissions is one ground which was very regularly raised before 2015 Act. That is, the reference did not include certain claims. So those days, high courts used to specifically state the issues on which they are referring the matter to the arbitrator. And the parties also, while filing a Section 11 application, they used to specifically state these are the grounds, these are the claims they are having. But later, when these issues started coming up again and again, courts have decided that even though they specifically claims are mentioned, they also say all other disputes arising out of this contract is also referred to the arbitrator. If such a word is not there, if only a specific issue or only a few specific issues are forming the reference of arbitration, then the award cannot go beyond that. If the award goes beyond that, then it is beyond the submission of the parties, then it will be get stuck by 34(2)(a)(4). Then composition of arbitral tribunal. This is very, very important, because even an arbitral institution cannot change the composition of the arbitral tribunal. The parties have the full independence and autonomy to decide what qualification should be their arbitrator, what will be the number of their arbitral tribunal, how they will act, everything relating to the procedural aspects also. In such a situation, if composition of the arbitral tribunal is the way in which it is given in the arbitration agreement is not followed, and if an award comes by a differently constituted arbitral tribunal, then that award can be set aside. For example, if there is an arbitration agreement which provides for 3 arbitrators, so here dispute arises, one party appoints one arbitrator, and that the other party was informed to appoint the second arbitrator within a particular time. So that party fails to do so. So the original party who initiated the arbitration should have gone to the High Court and got the second arbitrator appointed. In one of the cases, the arbitrator who was appointed by the one party declared himself as the arbitral tribunal, since the second party failed to appoint the arbitrator. And he started sending notice. He went to the level of completing the pleadings, and he passed award also, like a sole arbitrator. That award was set aside, saying that the constitution of the arbitral tribunal is not done as per the arbitration agreement provided in the contract. So the tribunal should be as specified in the contract only, then only the award is valid. Then the second phase, 34(2)(b). 34(2)(b) talks about only 2 major topics. One is arbitrability of the issue in dispute. Number 2 is the public policy. All of us know well public policy is the most complicated topic all over the world, because every country's court interprets public policy in a different manner. But let us see how in India it is happening. First, arbitrability. Arbitrability is an issue which is coming up from the date of when arbitration came in. But one of the important judgments of the Supreme Court in the Booz Allen case, given by Justice Ravindran, gave a shape to the arbitrability issue. In that judgment, it was very clearly held that any issue which is having the obligations and rights of the parties, the rights are, if they are about rights in rem, then those issues cannot be decided by arbitration. Rights in personam only can be decided by arbitration. So this is a clear definition given by the Supreme Court. Till today, arbitrability issue is tested in the light of the Booz Allen. Later, the issues like fraud, criminal case, all those issues also came in, but the judges were very clear. The commercial aspect of a dispute can be decided by arbitration unless otherwise it is predominantly a criminal case. The criminal case also simultaneously can go. So in arbitrability, if you want a simple example, for example, matrimonial cases cannot be arbitrable. Mortgage cases cannot be arbitrated because these are all involving not just rights in personam, these declare certain rights. That is why even today, even the intellectual property rights related disputes are not fully arbitrable because some of the rights are rights in personam, some of the rights declare the right of one party over a particular mark or a particular copyright. Those declarations cannot be done by an arbitral tribunal. So if an arbitrator decides some issues which are not arbitrable, then that award has to be set aside. Now let us come to the most critical topic of public policy. Public policy concept is globally recognized. UNCITRAL model law recognizes public policy as one of the important grounds for challenging an arbitration award. So every country's procedural law has this. Wherever you go, you have your arbitration in UK, USA or Singapore, everywhere, one of the grounds which are available to the parties to challenge the arbitration award is public policy. So in India, public policy has taken different shapes at different points of time. Now let us see what is the current situation. Public policy is specifically stated in section 34(2)(b)(2). An award which is in contravention to the public policy of India can be set aside. Okay. Once it is given, there are 3 explanations also given to that. Now in the new act. Public policy explanation 1. Making of an award which is affected by fraud or corruption or violative of section 75 or 81 of the act. These are the 4 situations which can be treated as public policy. If a fraud has happened because of which an arbitral award has come out, then that award can be set aside. If a party can explain and prove that there was a corruption done by the arbitrator or whatever it is, then that award also can be set aside under the public policy concept. And now confidentiality also has taken a stronger role in Indian Arbitration Act, so that also has become a ground. Now explanation 2, fundamental policy of Indian law. Fundamental policy of Indian law means what? Fundamental policy of Indian law means it is not Indian law. That is what court says. It is the certain underlying principles which formulate the Indian law. For example, a minor signing a contract does not bind him. This is a fundamental policy of Indian law. So likewise, there are certain policies which form the part and parcel or the basis of Indian legal structure is called fundamental policy of Indian law. I will explain it little later in the next slide. Next explanation is in conflict with the basic notions of morality and justice. This is the third explanation given in that section. Before scrutinizing all those grounds, let us see what courts recognize about the authority of the arbitrators continuously in Indian courts. Indian courts fully recognize that interpretation of a contract is fully under the domain of the arbitrator. If an arbitrator's view is possible, then that view cannot be seen as a wrong view because another view is possible. This is what is the courts are telling. When we are challenging an award, we will be saying that there can be three types of interpretation to a particular clause. One interpretation is given by the arbitrator, but the other party, challenging party, may say there is a better interpretation than this, which ought to have been taken. That kind of ground is not sustainable before the courts. Interpretation of the contract is fully under the domain of the arbitrator. Then facts. If you see the section 34 clauses also, none of those grounds mention anything about the merits of the case. That means contract also as well as facts also. With regard to facts also, whatever arbitrator says is final. Fact finding is fully under the domain of the arbitrator, so courts never interfere in that. Next point is very interesting. Interpretation of law. Now courts also have held that if a particular issue with regard to a legal question is referred to an arbitrator, whatever is the interpretation given by him will hold good and it is final. The only test what they put is whether it is a plausible view, that is a possible view. If there can be 10 views taken on a particular issue, if arbitrator has taken one of them, then it is well and good. The arbitrator award cannot be touched by the courts while testing their validity. And when awards can be set aside, main ground always is perversity. If any of the arbitrator has taken given a perverse finding which a common prudent person will not be able to give in a given situation, then it is perversity. When an award is given without any evidence, that is perversity. When an award is given with wrong reference of unrelated documents, then it is perversity. If vital documents are ignored by the arbitrator while finalizing the award, then that is also perversity. So perversity is one of the main grounds by which an award can be attacked in Indian courts. And technical grounds, as I told you earlier, incapacity, improper notice, beyond reference, arbitrability, formation of EAT, all those things are also available. Ignoring the contract. If the arbitral tribunal ignores the contract provisions of the contract between the parties, then that is also a ground for interference. But you have to see one important development in the Indian Contract Act. Recently, section 28(3) is amended. 28(3) of the Contract Act. Originally, the 28(3) specifically stated that the arbitrator, Arbitration and Conciliation Act, the arbitrator will decide in accordance with the contract. So the court said that the arbitrator cannot try to interpret in a contract without applying a straight jacket formula. That means you have to strictly follow the contract. That was the finding of the courts continuously. To avoid that, now to give some more liberty to the arbitrator to decide the matter fairly and judicially, that in accordance with has been replaced by taking into consideration. So that means now an arbitrator can decide a dispute before him, taking into consideration the contractual terms. So it makes a lot of difference. In accordance with the contract terms is a very tough route. Now it is a little bit relaxed by saying that taking into consideration the terms of the contract. So now arbitrators have got a little bit more liberty to interpret the contracts. So now let us see what is the fundamental policy of Indian law. Recently, two judgments you must have seen by Justice Nariman. One is Sayong International against National Highways Authority of India, which deals with this fundamental policy of Indian law in a detailed manner. Let us see what are those. One is, first requirement is legal compliance. Award should be compliant with statutes and judicial compliance. Judicial precedents. That means court judgments and statutes have to be followed by the arbitrator. Now this part is diluted later. I'll come back to you later. Judicial approach. Award should be fair, reasonable, and objective. Here also, these two were strengthened by Western Geo in 2014. Now they are again diluted. Now next is natural justice. That remains now also, and that will remain forever. Following the fundamental rules of natural justice is a duty of the arbitrator. And then Wednesbury's reasonableness. This talks about the perversity, finding on no evidence, or finding on irrelevant evidence, or ignoring the vital evidence available on record. This also remains. Judicial morality, following the judicial approach to the dispute, that also remains. Now, what is the patent illegality? Patent illegality takes one important role in international arbitration, because as per the new act, patent illegality ground cannot be taken in international arbitrations. This is only permissible in domestic arbitrations, not for international commercial arbitrations. So the patent illegality is a very interesting thing, because it covers substantive law also, procedural law also, contract law also. So that means why this kind of a liberty is given to the international arbitration only. Why they should not follow the substantive law, procedural law, contractual law? Because the idea behind it is that the disputes, while getting decided, the arbitrator need not exactly correctly interpret the substantive law. Still, award is sustainable. So this is to give more of a finality to the international arbitration awards. The act has changed like this, and the act very specifically says in the on the ground of a fundamental policy of Indian law, you are not allowed to go into the merits of the case also. So now what remains in this 5 points is, remaining 5 points as on today is Wednesbury's reasonableness available, judicial morality is available, natural justice is available. These are the three things by which an international commercial arbitration award can be challenged in Indian courts. Otherwise, the technical reasons, what I told you earlier. The other legal compliances, judicial approach are not available as a ground, and also patent illegality is not available as a ground for challenging an international commercial arbitration award in India. So now that is all for today. Now let us go back to the question answers. Friends, if you have any questions, all of you can type in the chat box. First of all, I also would like to make a small announcement that there is a feedback form in the chat box. Please fill it up so that you can get your participation certificate as well as the presentation copies. The first question is, what are the factors which have delayed the formation of India-seated international arbitration? No, as I told you, the only difficulty in promoting India's seat as a favorable international seat is mainly the pendency in courts and the delay in disposing of the arbitration related petitions and applications, including enforcement. In all other things, we are having a uniform law of Arbitration and Conciliation Act. We are also a signatory to New York Convention. We have less expensive English-speaking professionals. India is very ideally located for the entire Asia and Europe. But still, we are not able to project ourselves as an effective or a neutral seat of arbitration because till today, we are not able to reduce the dependency of the courts and expedite the arbitration related litigations. That is the only issue. The next question is, do you think there is an excess between perversity and principle of natural justice? Yeah, anything, you see, there will be some connection, but natural justice principles mainly in arbitration is treating both the parties equally, informing both the parties what is happening. That is what is the basic requirement of an arbitrator applying natural justice. Perversity is purposely doing something or even by mistake, but making a major mistake, like not relying on the evidence available or ignoring an evidence available or interpreting a contractual provision. Even a common prudent man will not do that way. If it shocks the conscience of the judge, these are all things happen, then it is called perversity. Then the next question is, Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act under Section 84 refers to arbitrator. I'm not sure, sir. This I have to check. Please send an email. I think Gautami, you can check. You can send an email. We will check and get back to you on this. I'm not very clear on that. Can environmental matters between government and any MSME, multinational company, are arbitrable? In my opinion, environment-related matters are right in rem. It involves a lot of public interest, so they are not arbitrable disputes. Can you explain the scope of statutory arbitrations? Yes, there are various statutory arbitrations. One good example is Micro Small Industries MSME Act, which provides for a statutory arbitration in which a micro or small industry, if they have made some supplies or services to any other company and the payment is not received, then MSME can go to the facilitation council in the state headquarters and make a reference. And the facilitation council in the MSME department will try to conciliate the matter. And if both the parties are not coming for a compromise or any settlement, then the MSME Council can refer the matter to an arbitral institution, even though there is no arbitration clause in it. Even though there is no arbitration clause in their contract. So these kind of things are called statutory arbitrations, which shows that the certain parties who are having contracts but who are vulnerable in the community, they are given such a protection to go for statutory arbitration. Statutory arbitration means statute, any other statute which provides that even if there is no arbitration clause, it can go for an arbitration. For example, there was a statutory arbitration which became very popular in Malaysia. About 10 years back, the entire construction companies, all the construction companies of Malaysia were going bankrupt because they were not receiving payments from the employers. So finally, Malaysian government had to get foreign contractors to come and work for them. So to resolve this problem, they brought in an act providing statutory arbitration for all construction contracts. So KLRCA, Kuala Lumpur Regional Arbitration Center, was made as the arbitration institution, and whoever is having a contract, construction related infrastructure contract, have to just contact KLRCA. They will appoint the arbitrator. Those awards were binding. Because of that, construction industry of Malaysia came back to normalcy because they started receiving funds and they started working also. So these kind of actions are taken by different governments at different points of time. That is how statutory arbitration works. But once arbitration is over, or when the arbitration is happening, it happens as per the Arbitration and Conciliation Act only. The challenge also will happen, enforcement also will happen accordingly. Gautami again, bank and borrower is from Nasik, Maharashtra, and arbitral tribunal is seated in Kalyan, Maharashtra, and has fast interim reliefs. Where will the... Yeah, Kalyan means Bombay. I don't know, you have to see the... I'm not really aware of Kalyan, whether it comes under the Bombay High Court jurisdiction or not. If it comes under Bombay High Court jurisdiction, original jurisdiction, then you can go to High Court. Otherwise, you have to appeal to the district court only. Kindly reiterate the names of the cases you mentioned. Okay. One case is Associate Builders, Western Geo, Booz Allen with regard to arbitrability, and the recent case is Sanyong Infrastructure versus NHAI. These are the important cases with regard to Section 34. What are the liberties provided to an arbitrator? Arbitrator is everything in an arbitration. Whichever part of the procedure parties are not agreeing, that means they are not able to take a joint decision, arbitrator has the authority to take with regard to procedure. With regard to decision making, contract interpretation, legal interpretation, and factual interpretation are completely within their domain. The only thing the arbitrator has to keep it in mind is it should not end up in a perverse award. It should give a reasoned award based on the evidences produced by the parties. Then that award will be a sustainable award. Can appointment of arbitrator under section 11(6) be reviewed? No, there is no review available for that. Is serious fraud Fraud means fraud as defined in the criminal laws is different. If it is like fraud which creates a commercial impact on the other party, then that is different. If it is having a commercial nature, definitely it is arbitrable. Even if it is criminal nature, the commercial part of it is arbitrable. There is no bar for that. Patent illegality, please explain patent illegality. Patent illegality, as I told you, only three things. One is ignoring the contract, ignoring the substantive law, ignoring the, I will not say ignoring, violating the procedural law, violating the substantive law, violating the contract provisions. These three form patent illegality. But these three are not available as a ground for challenging international commercial arbitration awards. It is only applicable to the domestic arbitration awards. We can share the PowerPoint presentation, but you have to fill up the form, then you will get it by email. Whether the bias to challenge the arbitral award is in tune with the principles of res sub judice. Yes. Is there, if there is no arbitration clause, can an arbitration still be invoked later? Yes, if there is no arbitration clause in the main contract, at any point of time, in a later stage also, parties can enter into an arbitration agreement and then opt for an arbitration. At any point of time, it can be done. Yes. Email ID I already gave. I'll post it again. If another question is, if both the parties are Indian, then arbitration is domestic arbitration governed by Part 1 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. Yes, if both the parties are Indians, then it is a domestic arbitration governed by Part 1 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. It is correct. Will Arbitration Council of India help strengthening the arbitral institution? Yes, that is what is the objective is. But some of the arbitration community people are feeling that it may end up like a regulator, which may affect the arbitration. So we have to wait and see how independently, how efficiently Arbitration Council of India is going to work. If they become like a regulator, then it will be a problem. But if it is like a guiding organization, motivating organization creating infrastructure and training facilities, then that will help the arbitration of India, in India. Feedback form is already there on the top. Aarti, can you share the feedback form again, please? Another question is on the basis of Indian judicial precedents, the foreign international arbitration is bound on the precedent. What if the judicial precedents of that country differ? See, I told you a basic thing is parties have the liberty to choose the substantive law of any country. If once parties choose a substantive law, let us say law of Singapore is the substantive law. Then while interpreting the contract, obligations of the parties, the arbitral tribunal will look into the Singapore law and related judgments only. It will not apply the Indian law. If Indian law is taken as the substantive law, then only Indian judicial precedents will be applicable for interpreting the contract. With regard to the procedural law, whichever country they have chosen, that will be applied. Both may be different countries also. But arbitral tribunal as well as supervising courts will apply the respective laws only. Human rights issues are not arbitrable. Difference between arbitration and public international law. Public international law related arbitrations come in investment treaty arbitrations. You can study that. Still today, clients are not preferring arbitration. They want to go to the courts and suggest some methods to influence and make the clients clear about the scope and benefits of arbitration. See, benefits of arbitration is, I can say, number one is it is much faster than the court proceedings, number one. Number two, once the award is received, if our opposite party want to challenge it, they have to deposit 70% of the money. So your client, whoever succeeds, they will get the money faster. Number three is, if it is a technical matter, like infrastructure and other things, you can get the arbitrator also technically qualified person. So he will be able to resolve the issue much better than a normal judge sitting in a court. Number four is, if it is an international scenario, then enforceability in so many countries are available. These are the main benefits of choosing arbitration. Again, the same question in a different format. Can you explain the meaning of patent illegality and its concept a little further? See, patent illegality, as I told you, there are three components to it. The arbitral tribunal, if not following the contract terms, then it is considered as a patent illegality. If the arbitrator giving an award violating the procedural law of the country, then it is a patent illegality. Number three is the substantive law, which is used to interpret the contract. If it is also not followed or violated, then it is called patent illegality. Now you are asking why that is not a ground. That is given in the Act. Act specifically excludes patent illegality from the definition itself. That is why that is not applicable. We have to go to section 34(2)(a), which specifically states an arbitral award arising out of arbitrations other than international commercial arbitrations may be set aside by the court if the court finds that the award is vitiated by patent illegality appearing on the face of the record. So this patent illegality is not a ground available in India for challenging an international commercial arbitration award. please provide some information about grounds to challenge domestic arbitration award by Indian court. The regular grounds are, one is, as I told you, perversity. That means interpretation is done by an arbitrator in a way a common person also will not interpret. This is one. Number two, if arbitrator has ignored the provisions of the contract, or if it has ignored some of the law, if it has not taken into consideration some of the citations, if it is not taking into consideration the procedural law, all these things are good grounds for challenging an arbitration award in Indian court, domestic arbitration awards. Kindly elaborate the grounds on which you have challenged the 2019 Amendment Act. Yeah, two main grounds are taken by me in that petition, which is filed in the Supreme Court. I have filed a writ petition under Article 32 challenging the 2019 Amendment Act on two main grounds. One is, while specifying the qualifications for arbitrators, they have excluded many categories of arbitrators in that. For example, a foreign lawyer who is practicing in a foreign country cannot sit as an arbitrator in India, in an international commercial arbitration also. Likewise, various professionals are not given an opportunity, which will affect Indian seat, because everybody will like to have the arbitrator nominated of their choice. Particularly when there are 3 arbitrator tribunals, nobody will like to appoint all persons from the same country, that too in high value arbitrations. So they will like to appoint somebody on whom they have the trust, or they think they are competent. Number one. Number two, while you are restricting the foreign professionals from getting appointed as arbitrators in India, Indian seat will lose its respect. Number three is, when we are allowing the parties to choose a foreign substantive law, if we are not allowing an arbitrator to come from that jurisdiction to sit as an arbitrator, that is also a denial of justice. The second ground is, I have also challenged, because in my opinion, these are all not coming under the reasonable classifications, so which is violative of Article 19 and 21. And also the next ground is, the Act provides for a 10-year experience to act as an arbitrator, which also is challenged by me, because there are small value arbitrations, large number of arbitrations are there, where younger professionals also can sit as an arbitrator and develop themselves in future as big arbitrators. So discrimination and reasonable classification are the two grounds. The matter is already admitted by Justice Nariman. We have to see the result of it. Could you throw some light on separability of arbitration clause? See, separability of arbitration clause is a concept by which global community created an understanding that the arbitration clause, even though it is provided in the main contract, even if the main contract becomes void or voidable, or terminated, in such a situation also, arbitration clause alone will survive to decide all the disputes arising out of that contract. If this arbitration clause also goes away, then the disputes cannot be decided by arbitration. So they are treated as two different agreements, separable agreements. That is, a main contract and the arbitration clause. Even main contract has a problem, but still arbitration clause will come out and survive. So arbitration only will be the again the forum by which the disputes can be resolved. That is what is called as separability of arbitration clause. When condonation of delay is filed in civil cases, can it be filed in arbitration award also? No, it is not possible. See, the General Limitation Act applies only when there is no specific limitation provided in the Special Act. Arbitration Act is a special act. It provides for a clear limitation. So beyond that, you cannot file another application seeking to condone the delay. JN Lal Das. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Now, one interesting question. Because of the current COVID situation, my 120 days period is over. Can I challenge the award after 120 days? You must have seen Supreme Court has invoked Article 142 and extended all limitations till further orders. That means they will tell a date. Till then, all the limitations are extended. You can go to the Supreme Court site, or you can send us a mail. We will send you that judgment. That is applicable to you. So even though you have lost that 120 days period to challenge the award, you can do it after COVID is over, or whenever Supreme Court makes the further announcements. Thank you so much for all your compliments. So many people have appreciated. One last question. Could you please explain if there is any provision for appealing against the award? Then why should people go for arbitration? It's a good question, but you should understand one thing. If you are not going for arbitration, your remedy lies in the civil court. In civil proceeding, the first appeal is called as appeal by right, you can say. So that means you can contest all the grounds, all the merits and demerits of the case once again in the first appeal. And there is a availability of second appeal also. And the proceeding of civil suit takes very, very long time, because evidence, procedure, everything is very elaborate. And while civil cases are going on, many times interim appeals are filed against miscellaneous applications, and the civil suit gets stayed or delayed. So all these provisions are not there in arbitration. Arbitration will be over within 18 months in India. And if you win the arbitration, then the opposite party, when they challenge it, they have to deposit 75% of the money in the court to get a stay. So people will pay. That is why arbitration is much better for resolving commercial disputes than the regular courts. Okay, now it is 4:30. Tomorrow we will meet in the next session, which is enforcement of foreign awards. Thank you so much. Thanks for being with us. I think chief guest has already left. Thank you so much.